One final video here. This is a PDS that I use to close fascia. This is a 1 PDS. It comes on both the CTB1, which is kind of like a CT1 equivalent, and then the CTX. You can see that both of these are tapered needles. Both the CT1 here is a half, and I believe the CTX is half as well. They're both 90 centimeter long as far as suture length, and they're the PDS2 material. So we're going to use the CT1 equivalent here just because it would be a little bit easier, but I just want to show you the size and kind of heftiness of this stuff. And again, this is what I use to close fascia. So a nice heavy suture. It's a monofilament. It does have, you can see that it tends to kind of really bunch up, and it has all of its little curls in it. So it has a long memory. One of the things you can do is to just kind of run it through your hand, pull it, give it a little bit of tension, and that will tend to straighten it out a bit. But one of the things with PDS is that it requires 4 complete square knots because of how thick it is, being a monofilament, having that memory. It needs very secure knots and a lot of them. So it's 8 throws, 4 complete square knots. So we're just going to do a couple of kind of interrupteds here. We'll come down, see if we can go across in one here. This does leave quite sizable knots just because it's a thicker suture. Some folks do use a 0 PDS. I like the 1 for fascia. And again, over the thumb and down, you can see how really clearly visible the suture is. Over the finger and down, thumb, down, finger, down. So that's 4 throws. That's 2 square knots. We still need to do 2 more. So thumb and finger, that's 3 square knots. Thumb and finger, that's 4 square knots. So 8 throws, 4 square knots. So you can see that that leaves a lot of suture material in the knot itself. So when you're using this on fascia, if it's in a thin patient, these knots could actually be palpable through the skin. So one of the things you can do is that you can try to bury them. So we can come down, and again, we talked about burying an interrupted, or just burying a knot is starting down here in to out. And then out to in. We'll pull this through. So finger first here, just because of how that's lining up, and then tighten that down. We did finger, so there's thumbs. This is our first square knot. Throw number 3, number 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. But now, instead of having that huge knot sticking above the skin, it is buried down in the tissue. So that's one thing that you can do with PDS, is to bury that knot so that it's not sticking up quite so much. The other thing that you can do, and here we're just going to do kind of our traditional interrupted. So again, thumb first, and then finger, thumb, finger. All right, so actually let's do this as a little bit of a running. Back off our zoom there a little bit. So if I was using this to close fascia, I would do this as a running. So here, and you can see that when we go to pull through this first pass, that it does kind of pull the knot, and it kind of tucks it under the tissue a little bit. So we'll do another pass there, and another, So nice running. All right, so let's say we're going to tie this next one. We're down at the end of our defect. So this is a little bit of a challenge because we've got 3 strands, 2 strands in our loop, and then the single strand. So it just makes for an even bigger knot. But again, we treat our loop as kind of a single strand over the thumb, cinch that down nicely, and then finger, thumb, finger, thumb. All right, so there's our 4 complete, and you can see this knot's going to be sticking up above the tissue. So one thing that you can do is to cut the loop, and I'm cutting this fairly close to the knot, and now we've got this. So we're going to bury it. And the way that you can do this is you can come, I kind of backhand this, and I just travel kind of along the suture line, not going too deeply, but just kind of traveling along the suture line. And just doing one bite like this, you can usually get it so that it will kind of pull the knot under a little bit. Occasionally, I'll even do 2 like this and kind of come over to the other side, do a little bit of a backhand. I typically don't do this. It's just something that you can do to try to bury this knot so it's not quite so prominent, and then you just cut this kind of flush with the tissue. So compared to this interrupted where the knot's really sticking up above, where we buried the knot completely invisible, here with our running, this first one got tucked down, so at least kind of on the tissue, and then this one here really sticking up, but with trying to bury it, pull it under, it's a little bit better. So that's PDS.